Hey everybody, this is Rydo, and we are back to another recording slash live stream of Hearthstone. Today is Monday, May 29th, Memorial Day in the United States, and apparently that means it's also a great day for my internet service provider to decide to not work. So we're starting a live stream rather later than I had planned on it, and let's see, we need to play 50 warrior class cards, win 3 games with the rogue, and play 15 demons. I think I could probably play 15 demons relatively easily. So let's hop into that. Now, because of the... let's see, do I have a demon deck? Yes, I do. Let's start with that. Because of the approaching E3 and Memorial Day and all of that, there's not really a ton of news, so I'm gonna cross my fingers that despite the fact that I'm starting at a different time, that I'll either get new or continued fans to come on and chat, because otherwise this is potentially gonna be very close to an hour's worth of streaming in total. Not really a lot to talk about otherwise. And one of the things I was going to talk about, and I didn't even bother to write it down, is kind of the fact that I've noticed myself kind of getting a little repetitive. I guess most people wouldn't catch it until they've watched almost all my content, but like, I kind of have the same opinions and the same rants to the same opinions. So and on a few cases, I feel like I'm not really driving myself to say anything new. But so I'm kind of bored of my own voice, and more than anybody else probably is, just on the fact that I've heard myself say the same thing, particularly on the lines of economics and seeing companies invest into video game companies and DLC, and it's really kind of the same rant over and over again with DLC pre-ordering and episodic games, all things that probably should be said over and over again, but I would like to get more questions, get more interactions. Last stream, somebody asked me about something political, and you know, it probably wasn't super useful to talk about that as a video game critic, but it's kind of nice to just to say something different.
Job's done.
So I suppose, as I'm hoping people will come on, let's just go through the news. I barely have half of my whiteboard filled with news, and I don't really know why the news has been a little dry. I could have probably filled it out with announcements. There have been a lot of Japanese games announced lately, which I suspect probably means that there's been some kind of convention or reason for that, but only a couple I felt were really worth mentioning. Let's just start at the top though. The Friday the 13th game came out, and it is having awful server issues, and I am really not amazingly surprised by that, because
I will enjoy watching you die.
I can ease your pain.
as it goes, let's see. The random demon from your hand onto the battlefield. Yeah, I'm not really surprised that the Friday the 13th game is bad. It didn't ever look good. The most interesting thing about it is that they somehow got the license to the name Friday the 13th, which I assume is probably not that hard to get, in all honesty. I doubt I played 15 demons there. But we'll try again. I may have played close to 7 of them. Yeah, 5. So 3 more games. Just like that, and we're fine. Originally, it was only going to be spiritually like the Friday the 13th game, so it was a very small, I believe, Kickstarter game to begin with. Then they got way over their head when people started taking notice of it, and the owner of the rights of Friday the 13th allowed them to actually use Jason Voorhees in the Friday the 13th name, which I'm not sure really if there really is even a copyright or trademark for the phrase Friday the 13th, because it may just be too general. So it may just be the license of Jason Voorhees. It is more than likely going to be one of the last asynchronous multiplayer games out there, where one player plays as the bad guy who's super powerful against multiple good guys. In this case, Jason Voorhees is the bad guy, and the other players are camp counselors trying to fix vehicles to escape, is I think how the game goes. There seems to be a few ways through multiple steps that you can actually kill Jason Voorhees and win that way, but for the most part, the goal is to escape. This is very, very similar to Dead by Daylight, which wasn't an amazingly interesting game in the first place. And frankly, if you're just going to compare, Dead by Daylight has the advantage of allowing you to play as multiple different types of bad guys instead of just one, who have different abilities and different areas. And frankly, the gameplay mechanic in Dead by Daylight is a little bit better, because when the bad guy captures you, he has to put you on this basically like a cross to slowly drain out all the life that is all the life in the player, and that takes a while, and the player can be saved. As far as I've seen, from what little I've looked at the Friday the 13th series, none of that is really the case. It seems if you get near Jason Voorhees, he can probably just kill you, if not majorly hurt you, in very quick, short actions, and that's not great. The animation always looked bad. It always looked really bad in this game, in Friday the 13th, and I was crossing my fingers, just hoping that that would improve before it came out. It seems like there's only one area in the entire game, or maybe it randomly generates the locations of few buildings in the same area. It really doesn't look like a game in general. This has been my complaint about it from the beginning, is it just doesn't look like it has any gameplay in it. You try to lock doors and keep people keep them out, and that's kind of all you can do. Let's see. Let's play that. And before the game even came out, it didn't look good. I don't know if any of the big 3 horror movie series that I'm thinking about, when you have like Friday the 13th, Nightmare on Elm Street, and then maybe a little bit lower the Hellraiser series, and if you want to throw in a modern one, you could have Saw. Saw had a couple of games, and I can't believe they're actually making another Saw movie, but none of those games specifically strike me as things that would work none of those movie series specifically strike me as something that would make good video games. And Friday the 13th in particular is kind of the worst case of that. It feels like what you might do if you were trying to do something like Outlast, but not quite Outlast. Let's see, I need to play demons though. So I have to try this.
Doom for you. By the holy light.
So yeah, it's even before the game came out, it didn't look good. And now that the game is out, well, apparently the servers are working like garbage. Every single video game reviewer who has spent any time on it has wasted most of their time, and the servers are awful. Apparently the Xbox One version of the game is actually the beta client. It's not even the same version as others. I need 3 more demons to play, then I'm done. And they say they're working around the clock to fix the server issues, but this thing's dead in the water, and I guess pun intended there, since that is I guess how Jason Voorhees dies in most of the movies. I haven't really bothered to watch all the Friday the 13th movies. They always struck me as more interested in showing the campers, the camp counselors running around in their underwear, more than making an interesting horror character to kill them. Because unlike Freddy Krueger in Nightmare on Elm Street, who was a terribly written, but at least he had a personality character, a personality to deal with, Jason Voorhees didn't really talk and didn't really do anything. He's just this unstoppable monster, which you could certainly do movies that are better than that, where you don't show the monster at all. If he's just gonna be an unknowable evil, you might as well just be an unknowable evil. Moving on though, let's just keep moving through the news. Nintendo's stocks have jumped to an 80-year high following Monster Hunter XX for the Switch being announced. I assume this is Nintendo of Japan stocks, because I don't think Nintendo of America has been around for 80 years. No, they should have just been out from 83, which only puts it somewhere close to 35, 40 years without doing the actual math.
I can ease your pain.
So that just is a good indicator on how popular Monster Hunter is in Japan and how well known it is. I wouldn't be upset if it came to PC. It would certainly give me something different to do than shooters if I had just played one Monster Hunter game, but then I would also have to be very careful not to play every single variation or version of that that potentially would come about. Battlecry, give you demons +1/+1. I guess there's really nothing else to that news. I was not exaggerating when I said there was no news. Nintendo stocks jumped to an 80-year high. I guess you kind of look at that and you realize that Nintendo of Japan is a very conservative company that has a lot of cash on hand. And so it's not particularly like you would invest into Nintendo of Japan to make quick short-term profits. It's not something like what you would do for an internet startup company like maybe Snapchat, which Snapchat stocks actually skyrocketed when they first IPO'd and then plummeted down to almost nothing if I heard that story right. Well, I guess I could have done something more there. So I would say if you're investing in the Japanese individual stocks, which maybe you can, maybe you can't, because some countries you can't invest in companies unless you're a citizen of that country, so that they don't want, for instance, China or Russia to spend a couple $1 billion and then own 100% controlling shares of all of the companies in a different country. But if you could buy Nintendo, I'd say you probably are buying it like you would buy bonds or gold, as something that's very stable and not going to go anywhere, which is also part of the reason why we see that Nintendo doesn't actively really bother to do too much. Because why should they bother when they have all that cash available to them? Let's see. Go ahead and hit here. It'd be nice if I won. Sure. Final Fantasy VII Remake has shifted from external to internal development in its focus, which kind of implies that Final Fantasy VII is not going to come out anytime soon. Like, if you're shifting from external to internal development, that pretty much means you're starting over from scratch again. So that's probably fine, because from what I recall of seeing Final Fantasy VII Remake, the game wasn't doing too hot anyways. And if this is going to be their way of riding that train, it's that might be a good way to move. But certainly remember that is Square Enix, and Square Enix is certainly doing a lot of weird stuff right now. For instance, they said they do want to see Hitman continue, but in all honesty, if they did care, and the truth is they don't, they wouldn't have tried and announced that they were trying to sell out IO Interactive and then caused IO Interactive to have to lay off people. All of these things would have been done without any announcement at all if they really cared, and they just actually want to, well, what's the right phrase here? They want to make profit off of it. That's the right phrase. Yeah. Not a difficult phrase to figure out at all. They just want to make money, and so they don't care if they destroy Hitman as a series. Hitman as a series is pretty much a moderately good series in the first place. You have about 6 games, and arguably 3, including the newest one, which was released very oddly and changed in so many different ways, probably directly because of Square Enix's interference. That I seriously doubt too many people are going to be very interested in buying that franchise. And even if they do buy the franchise, are they going? I don't think they're going to really want to buy the employees that made the game, and it seems like the employees are already leaving ship, so or being fired, so it's too little too late.
A paltry task.
So yeah, Yeah, but don't for a second think they really care. If they cared, they wouldn't have gone down this process. The way this happens in most companies, if you want to get rid of a division, is you just tell everybody you won't be renewing their contract / keeping them on in the next year. You don't sneak it on them. You make it very obvious. You give them plenty of time to find other employment. And if you just want to sell the IP and the company in total, then you would just secretly try to go into negotiations without any of that being leaked. And none of that seems to be the case here. Moving on, Shenmue 3 is going to skip E3 27, which probably just means that Shenmue 3 is not going to be out anytime soon. As we go into E3, anything that you figure should have a trailer, an announcement, or something new about it said. If there isn't something said, you can guess that the development is going to have that release date pushed back. We are in a weird position, I suppose, where the rest of this year might have a lot of games get pushed back, but I'm not 100% certain that that's what's going to happen. Add a random demon to my hand.
Careful, they bite.
Random minion into a 1/1 squirrel, please. Well, that didn't really do much, but Rhyme came out. The game pretty much sucks, but it also has technical issues, and they've come out and said they will remove De Nouveau from it, which I guess some people are blaming the De Nouveau anti-cracking software in it for the technical issues, which, I mean, that drum gets beaten a lot, so it seems like there's certainly a lot of smoke, if not fire, to say that De Nouveau severely hinders performance in games. And it seems just the standard operating procedure now for games to come out with De Nouveau, and as soon as De Nouveau gets cracked, they just take it out of the system, and they're like, well, it got us those first couple of weeks of sales, and that's all we really cared about. But there's really nothing else to say about that. Kill Instinct is still happening in a very weird way. They're this weird. I think the system is a free-to-play system where you're allowed to play certain characters on certain weeks for free, and then you can pay money to unlock specific characters or all the characters, something like that. And the base part of the game is just not even a consideration to it. So it's a weird way to go, but then I guess Killer Instinct is this third tier. Let's try to win some rogue games. This will be interesting. Which rogue deck do I want to play? We'll try this. It's not gonna beat Taken. It's not gonna beat Killer Instinct's not gonna beat Capcom versus SNK. It's not gonna come up against Injustice, which is probably one of the most fair comparisons to it. But it can be its own thing and be slightly nostalgic, and because it's still happening after E3, their new character Eagle will join the series, the lineup. So if there's kind of like the new release of Hitman, they're trying to just keep a consistent fan base even over having a huge fan base. Let's just keep going on the news. PS3 production has ended in Japan, which is to say it's probably ended production everywhere. a beta patch is out for Vanquish to fix an interesting bug where the higher the frame rates increase the damage that was either being dealt to the enemies or the enemies were dealing. I could never get it straight, but either way it was certainly messing with the balance. Far Cry 5 will support 2-player co-op across the full campaign. It also will have airplanes, muscle cars, and dogs you can hire to steal guns from enemies. And as far as Far Cry 5, I guess I don't really have anything else to say. I'm gonna just choose to hold my tongue about their choice for enemies until I see or hear about how well Far Cry 5 really does it. Whether it ends up alienating a lot of the conservatives that live in the United States unfairly, or whether it is a single depiction of a fictional cult slash gang. Alright, so I have to do this, which gives me a coin, which is a bear trap, and then, let's see, what do I want to do? This, end the turn. So 2 games that I thought aren't really worth mentioning by themselves, but in general are Little Witch Academia and a Steins Gate video game have been announced, both of which are moderately popular as far as I know. I haven't been watching anime in a while, so I noticed the names at the very least, so they're hardly video games that can fly under the wire as things that as potentially, what am I trying to say here? They are known entities in the anime series, unlike other games that might be based off an anime. I would imagine in the old days something like a Saint Seiya video game for an NES might not be immediately recognized as being based off the Saint Seiya series. This is something that I don't feel has been happening very much lately, and it probably for the better. So we have this potential case where should I play this? Add a random spell when I'm inspired. Let's do this. And ooh, I did not say that right at all.
Justice is mine.
So yeah, I'm hoping to not see more of that. None of those games ever turn out to be that good. I feel like movies should be made for movies. Video games should not be turned into movies. Movies should not be turned into video games. We don't really have a lot of examples of this working well. And we have tons and tons of examples of it not working at all. Let's go ahead and attack before we do anything.
Let's negotiate. You conceive, and I'll let you live.
And then, in just a couple of things left here, the Randy Purgeford, the CEO of Gearbox, along with about 13 other large companies such as Apple, Amazon, Google, have told the Texas governor not to pass any laws that discriminate in a short, like 1-paragraph statement. Now, I assume this probably stems from efforts in Texas to pass discriminatory bathroom bills for public buildings slash schools, where
This
and
guy's toast.
they're calling them discriminatory because it would do things like specifically tell the tiny percentage of transgender children in Texas. Texas is a huge state. Whether they have to go to their birth gender or their appearance gender bathroom, and instead of just doing what happens right now, is each principal school district decides that on their own, pretty much, and or it gets figured out. It's really just people making politics out of nothing.
We are the sword in the shadows.
Let's go ahead and kill this.
Justice is mine.
So, on the face of it, I can't say anything wrong with that. In general, they've made such a simplistic statement to say that our companies, and Gearbox is out of Dallas, Texas, although they have made a secondary office in Montreal, Quebec. So there is I suppose, reason for the governor to listen to that. Most of those other companies, however, are not out of Texas, so I don't think there's a Google or a Microsoft or a Apple headquarters or major office in Texas. However, they all do major business in Texas, and so they do have an investment there. On the other hand, it is, I suppose, just companies getting into politics when you'd prefer video game companies just make video games, and it is now the political beliefs of the CEO is getting enforced in the company policy of Gearbox, which, if you don't happen to agree with some of the political beliefs of the CEO of a video game company, it kind of sucks then when you see them take effort and profits that they got from the games that you bought, and you wanted them to use that money to make games. Now they've spent that effort and that profit to instead
Justice is mine.
darn it, I could have won. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's not as few people that end up boycotting Gearbox over something like that letter, but probably not that letter, because it's written so vaguely that you have to basically come back with a retort to say that you are pro-discrimination, whatever that may be, which is not an argument anybody has successfully tried to make in probably 60 years in the United States. Anyways, that's it for this recording. Stay tuned if you're watching live. Hopefully more people get on the chat. We have a new person, so I'll accept that friend request. As always, I ask you to like, share, subscribe, comment, and watch every second of my videos. If you want to friend or follow me on basically any social media sites, there's a whole bunch of links down below. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.